Jason Steele. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin Michael Grace.
We are approaching the second anniversary of the podcast. It's been a fun 2 years, and we hope to keep going for at least another 2, maybe more. But to keep going, paying the fees for the platforms, and generally keeping body and soul together, we're going to need your help. So if you can find it in your hearts and wallets to make a donation to the podcast, go to our webpage at twokevins.com. That's the number 2 followed by kevins.com. And hit the PayPal button there to send us some cash. We really appreciate it. We also have a Patreon page if you'd like to help us out with a regular monthly donation to assist us in this podcast and with our other projects. The address for that is patreon.com/twokevins. Thanks so much. And now back to the show. Our topic is against matriarchy. Have you noticed how all male politicians, mostly on the right but sometimes on the left, are asked if they support feminism or more pointedly if they consider themselves to be feminists? And woe to those who do not answer correctly or even quickly. It's almost as if, well, the women are in charge. Women certainly seem to be in charge of Google when that company, worth billions and billions and ostensibly run by men, had a collective nervous breakdown after an internal memo was leaked to the press. The memo, questioning gender equality and affirmative action in the workplace, was written by a young male employee, James Damore. A gaggle of Google women demanded that the man be fired, and he was. Some female workers claimed to be so upset by the memo that they took a day off to recover. They weren't fired. So, are Western societies matriarchies? What other evidence is there, Kevin, that we are living under a matriarchy?
Have you looked around?
At what?
The world?
The world. Okay.
Ever go on the internet?
Actually.
No. I would say specifically, more than anything else, the triumph of harm-based morality.
Explain.
Well, harm-based morality is a very female way of thinking, not exclusively female. But there's a problem. People are suffering. Their suffering must be assuaged.
Oh, okay.
Homosexuals complain of this and that and the other. Let's do all these things for homosexuals. Homeless people. Let's do all these things for homeless people. Oh, terrible things happening to junkies. Let's set up rooms where junkies will have these amenities.
Okay, so that proves we are living under harm-based morality, but how do you make the leap over to matriarchy?
Because women aren't very good as a rule with dealing with consequences.
Okay.
It is a commonplace, and I'm sure you have come across this yourself. And this isn't something that only men see. Women see it as well. That when women advance some course, which is adopted, which then goes all J.G. Ballard, what is their common response to complaints that you have led us to disaster? Well, I'll answer my own question. It is, but our intentions were good. My intentions were good.
Okay. All right. I guess I should ask for examples of that, but I want to sort of dive into the peg for our
the greatest example of our time is transsexuality. That there have always been a handful of people who have claimed to suffer from what is now called gender dysphoria. Apparently now, it's just everybody suffering from gender dysphoria. So what must we do? We must turn society upside down. And we must start doping, 10-year-old, 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 4-year-old children with drugs to prevent them from becoming particularly men and sometimes women. And and who's leading the way here? It's women. You've all seen the photographs. Oh, here's the charming 8-year-old transsexual. And there you see the other family members, and you see mom, who's got the 1,000-watt smile, and dad is normally staring at the floor, or he has expression on his face that says, "Get me out of here. Please, get me out of here." And dad is too weak to stand up to mom.
Well, there was some suggestion, I think it was just in a tweet, as a matter of fact, that the women that are behind that type of support for gender dysphoria are actually suffering from Munchausen by proxy.
Munchausen syndrome by proxy, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Does that resonate at all?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Sure. It seems likely. Mm-hmm. The problem is that women often come up with bizarre enthusiasms, and in the past they were metaphorically slapped down. Mm-hmm. They're no longer metaphorically slapped down because that would be, just unthinkable.
Right. They've got the Ellen audience behind them, cheering wildly.
Well, let's look at the government, the military, the police, academia, business, and the media are largely now dominated by women, or they are run for the benefit of women, or what's seen to be the benefit of women.
Okay, that what seemed to be is the cue. I take that as the cue for the peg for this, which was the Google story about Damar writing a critique of diversity.
Well, I've got to step in from the beginning. I seem to be the only person who has noticed that he looks exactly like Richard Hendricks from Silicon Valley. Have you noticed this?
Well, he does have there is a similarity there, but Damar has that
the same facial shape, the same
Roman
haircut.
Nose.
Well, Hendricks has rather a large nose too. The same kind of facial expression.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. All right. Are you going to imply that this has something to do with the matriarchy?
No, I'm going to suggest that people watch Silicon Valley if they haven't seen it already, to get an idea of how much Silicon Valley is a cult. You have seen this word cult used with regard to Silicon Valley, the place, and Google in particular. But the television show has been through this in great detail over 4 years, with one of the jokes being with regard to China, that here in America, we don't have the freedoms that you Chinese take for granted.
Okay, fair enough. But just to get back to the point, why I brought it up at that point was, you had suggested that, people were using the matriarchy. And I wanted to say, well, that actually came up in the preliminary discussions when we were talking about this. I said, well, Google, is it a matriarchy? No, it's run by men. You said, but they're using the matriarchy as a cudgel to keep their employees in line. And I thought that was particularly interesting, because I was thinking that's why the whole Handmaid's Tale is on TV right now. It's basically being used as a cudgel to keep men in line.
Well, you see, when you have a cult, you have all these rules. And you need people who are especially dedicated to keeping the rules. And feminists play one of these roles in Silicon Valley. That you have employees that are terrified of stepping out of line. And what constitutes stepping out of line? Well, that's constantly changing, isn't it?
I guess so.
Look, here's one way. Here's one way in which this is not to the benefit of women. That persuading women that is in their interests to surrender their lives to corporations which care not a jot for them, to trade away their youth to, I'm working for this great company, and when it comes down to it, the company doesn't even know who you are. Which leads to, all sorts of problems, not least of which, one of which is alternately amusing and irritating. Women in their 40s complaining publicly, of course, because this always has to happen in public, because if it doesn't happen in public, it might as well not exist, about how they can't have children. Well, perhaps if you'd, tried to have children, or if you just let nature have its way back in its 20s, you wouldn't have this problem, but that might have interfered with your career. Now, what we're talking about...
You're making a plea for corporations to step up to the plate.
No, I'm not making a plea for corporations to step up to the plate. I am merely pointing to the fact that the world we live in now is to a very large extent the result of this sinister alliance between capitalism and feminism. Women must be taken out of the house. They must be put into the workplace, which means more consumption all along the line. Who's going to look after the children? Who's going to make the meals? Who's going to clean the house? All those extra trips that have to be taken by car.
Juanita from Mexico. The maid, the caregiver.
Yes.
I don't know. The one they pay $10 an hour or whatever. I'm not sure. Is that what they're thinking?
No, there's just, when a woman runs a household, when she stays at home to look after the children and run the household, there is much less consumption than when she goes to work 5 days a week, often staying late, often bringing work home with her. So let's order food. Let's order food over the telephone or text for food. Let's drive out for food. There is nothing organic about this. Everything has to be laid on. Children aren't allowed to live in a neighborhood anymore and meet each other and have their games and establish their hierarchies. No, this all has to happen under the rubric of some sort of official organization. And there's practically no moments that children have alone anymore. They must be doing something which is organized and which is going to, get them into a better college and some such. And a large part of this has to do with the guilt that mothers feel over having neglected their children.
Okay. Does that make it a matriarchy, though, if they're failing?
Oh, no, but see, this is the dream. The dream is that women are equal. They're not equal. That they are clearly not equal. And just to give one example, just in case anyone was in any doubt about this, that all these attacks on the Google memo writer, he's, talking about some sort of antediluvian world, and he's claiming that, women are so different. Oh, I see. We've conveniently forgotten this push, which is decades old and gets stronger every year, the flex time push. How dare companies suggest that women's needs are the same as men's needs? So the workplace needs to be bent out of shape in order to accommodate women. Now, do you remember during the O.J. Simpson trial when there was Rosa or whatever, who was the maid or the housekeeper from El Salvador? And she was brought up to testify at the trial. And Marcia Clark, the prosecutor, she had some sort of childcare dispute. So there was a serious discussion with the judge about whether poor Rosa should be imprisoned for the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Well, Marcia Clark dealt with her childcare problem, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a childcare problem. I just found, of course, children are a problem now. Right. They gum up the works. Something which is natural is now seen as completely unnatural.
Okay.
That we have this situation that how dare Damore claim that women have a tendency towards neuroticism. Well, I think that the response to his memo proves
Nobody's
that.
Showing up to work.
Yeah. I was just so othered that I couldn't possibly show up to work. Yeah. You see.
That's your excuse?
Well, no. It's a convenient. It's a day off work, right?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a day off work.
You're suggesting it was BS then?
Well, no. It is obviously it is. One of the big problems that men have working for companies like this is that they were encouraged not to have any private life at all. Hey, we got ping pong tables here. We got foosball. We have a candy wall. We have hammocks. Why do you need to go home? Google's your home now.
Yeah, I guess so.
And a lot of men, they fall victim to this. And I don't know, maybe they wake up in their late 30s and they think, what happened in my life? I don't know anybody. I don't know anything except this company. That's not right, is it? You see, the joke is that the men are always looking for an excuse to spend more time at work. And the women, perhaps being more sensible, are looking for reasons not to spend as much time at work. Now, of course, Google, like all of these corporations, has been bashing men over the head since God knows when. Oh, toxic masculinity. Oh, and the engineer culture. Oh, right, this evil engineer culture. Well, the engineer culture is the reason why Google and these other companies exists.
Yeah, but they have accepted the narrative, some say, to the detriment of their core business. In fact, that's all they've become. Some people suggest that, and
well, they hold a monopoly now, don't they? Yeah. They largely hold a monopoly over searching. Although I've been thinking, I use Google. I'm a normal person, and I was thinking, maybe I should switch to Bing. Because Microsoft is conspicuously less evil than Google. And I was thinking maybe I should go whole hog and see whether DuckDuckGo is an acceptable substitute. Do you use it?
I use DuckDuckGo, yeah. I use it because of the browser that I use. And yeah, it's not as good for news searches as Google, that's for sure. But if I want to avoid Google, I can go to Bing, which is equal to Google in terms of news searching. So
I want to
news grazing, not targeting specific.
Let's talk about the double standard here. I'm reminded that the great English novelist Kingsley Amis once said that arguing with women is like arguing with communists. Because they're always changing the ground. It's always shifting around them. I mean, you hear talk about arguments between men and women, and I don't mean quarrels, okay? I mean arguments. But, men have this idea that it's supposed to work thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Arguing with women doesn't work like that.
Okay.
Work like that at all. Here's a typical example. There's this silly woman called Shri Pradikar, who's a columnist, a gender and race columnist with the Toronto Star. And
that sounds wonderful.
I'm tempted to suggest that the reason that all of these Bindi men have come to Canada and the United States in recent years is because they're fleeing Bindi women. But then I think, no, they can't be like that in India, or else the race would swiftly die off.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
to die off.
So anyway, Shri Pradkar wrote a column which is entitled, hang on, the title's not important. It's that they shouldn't have fired James Damore. Mm-hmm. They should have instead killed him softly with its love, she asked. Should they have done that? That sounds... Yikes, It's women's neuroticism makes them less suited to be software developers. Ooh. Whether the brains of men or women are biologically different, much of the debate is focused on this. One study says they are, one another says they are not. Can you imagine this? Okay, let's look at this really serious and important question about men's brains and compared to women's brains. One study says no, one study says yes, let's move away from there. No credible studies have made the connection between those differences and the career choices women make. I suspect that that's not true, but this is one of those examples where, we're going to wait for science to prove to us what everybody knows?
Well, we're also going to wait for economics to prove it to us as well. I mean, that's what Google's been set up now as the big test case for diversity, isn't it? I mean, everybody's going to watch it now.
Well, it's one of them. How about all the experiments in government and the military and the police?
Those will get covered up. I'm saying that Google's going to be front and center in this because they have a value. They've got lots of dough. They conquered the world. Now let's see. Will it be like spaceflight? Oh, we put a man on the moon. Now let's continue to grow. And if they don't grow because of their diversity policies, then people are going to say, well, that was a bust.
Now,
don't you?
Here's what Shri writes. Well, it's comforting to seek the status quo and explain away discrimination as a biological necessity. Not being equally considered for those bro jobs is in our interest, silly. Why do countries such as India and those in Latin America produce proportionally more female programmers than North America? I sent her a Twitter question asking, inviting her to tell us more about the cutting edge programming done by women in Latin America.
Wow, that would be cool.
I mean, seriously, this is,
I haven't.
This is what I like to call soap opera thinking. A lot of women are susceptible to this kind of thing, and a lot of them are introduced to it via soap operas. You know the cliche in a soap opera, often a lot of the, the plots are based on this, that the old patriarch dies and the wife takes over, and of course she's beset, with difficulties and with people saying, "You're not up to this, right?" And she proves them all wrong. And the lesson that's taken from this is that anyone can run a business. I mean, how difficult can it be? We saw this in Girls. This boyfriend who was, playing in a band occasionally and doing, not much of anything. The next season begins, and he's a top app developer. Which, I see. These people who write computer programs, they're just not thinking about coding all the time, right?
Okay.
You see, Lena Dunham and the staff of Girls, it's like, app developer, anyone could do that. Like the coding. Ooh, anyone could do that. I could do that if I wanted to. No, you couldn't. And I'm not saying that because I'm a man, because most men can't do it. And it's not just that most men couldn't do it, it's most men wouldn't want to do it. This idea that, you get very much an instant response now. It's not like the old days of punch cards, where you had to be a lot more precise in your programming. But this idea of writing a program and it doesn't work, I'll try to fix it this way, and then it doesn't work. And then, you end up, why isn't this working? Now, to a certain type of person, they love that kind of challenge. But to most people, normal people, it just becomes infuriating. Now, Shri Paradkar continues, to lean on science first and then to switch to the claim that women don't want leadership because, quote, these positions often require long, stressful hours that may not be worth it if you want a balanced and fulfilling life, unquote, is just ridiculous and ignores societal expectations that women carry the physical and mental load of running the house. It's not just about who does the dishes. You see, it's like arguing with communists. Women are perfectly capable of doing exactly the same as men, maybe even better. No, but you see, they got to run the house. They have to do the dishes. No, they don't have to do any of those things. They do not have to do any of those things. I don't think that Shri Paradkar or her readers have any memory of that world. The world of Leave It to Beaver or the Donna Reed Show, where women were to a very large extent judged by the house that they kept. You pay people to do these things, to make your food, to clean your house, to look after your children. Nobody cares anymore. In fact, nobody cares whether your house is a pigsty. You don't have to invite people to your home, to your apartment anymore if you don't want to. And it's not, I wonder what she's hiding in there. I bet she doesn't keep a tidy house. No one thinks like that. But you see, Cherie here has admitted that, maybe we can't hack it, but whose fault is that? It's men's fault because they're not pulling their weight in the household. Again, I find that hilarious because typically in a household, who is it that's going to be more concerned about how, clean, tidy it is? The woman or the man?
Right, okay. The woman, she's going to be the one complaining, I would suggest, based on my own level of cleanliness.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. When you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. Yeah, well, see, this woman gets paid, 6 figures to basically parrot cliches. to actually suggest to people that, oh, maybe we should look to Latin America for our programming tips. Yeah, tell us all about all the exciting work being done in Venezuela. I hear they're pretty progressive.
Chile.
Now, there was Katerina Jung, a.k.a. Kathy Young, wrote a piece in The Observer, which she was touting, this fuss about the difference between men and women, the way that they think. Mm-hmm. And National Review got into the act. Someone named Nicole Jelena, I believe from the Manhattan Institute. Just let me check here. A lot of comments on this one. Ooh, a lot of comments. Contributing editor to the Manhattan Institute City Journal. And this is the middle ground position. This is the traditional right-wing position. This is the position of, we're not surrendering just yet. Okay? Mm-hmm. Give us 5 years and we'll surrender completely, because that's the kind of people we are.
Right.
Google shouldn't have fired James Damore. The company claims to encourage internal dissent and debate, and that is what Damore provided. But the contents of his memo are nothing to celebrate. He said nothing that hasn't already been said in tiresome fashion for decades. Oh, tiresome.
Oh,
That's what we call the differences between men and women. I don't know, how much of a spurg would you have to be to actually believe that? The differences between men and women, I don't know, that's basically responsible for all civilization, all art, all culture.
But it's, that stuff is pretty tiresome. That's all I could say.
No, well, see, she writes, his memo reads like something a diligent, earnest high school freshman might write. Quote, on average, men and women biologically differ in many ways, unquote, is hardly shocking news. As for the rest, we've heard it before. Well, no, you see, it's hardly shocking news, but what is shocking is that shock troops of feminists have decided to overturn everything. And of course, the right's argument is, just slow down a little. You're kind of embarrassing us. Biological determinism, she continues, is a simplistic worldview. No, it is not. Women give birth to children and men do not. Further than that, and I say this with some embarrassment as someone who was a dread word house husband for a year, men are terrible at raising children. They're no good at it because they lack the overweening sympathy with fractious children that their mothers do. I'll just give one example, and this is a commonplace. That you break up a quarrel between your children, and it's over the possession of some toy. And then it starts up again, like 10 or 15 minutes later, and then you learn, to your shock and rage, that the dispute is still over that toy, only they've switched sides. And they are arguing with just as much sincerity and passion as they were on the other side 10 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the male reaction to that is, I'm washing my hands of this. You people are crazy. You have nothing to offer me. Whereas the woman's reaction, the mother's reaction is, oh, I just, let's work this out. And no, you stop crying. And oh, no, there's no right and wrong here. We'll just work this out. It's all about love, right? And it is all about love. It is all about love. And children need that kind of unconditional love, certainly at early ages, from their mothers. We've substituted capitalism for that now. And of course, the feminists are on board with that. And so we're living the dream now, right? Because children are turning out so very well, aren't they?
Okay. That's debatable, of course, yes. They're not leaving home anyway. Maybe that's what women want. I'm not sure. They are getting an education, post-secondary education at tremendous cost to themselves. I don't know how much is the fault of the mothering, though. I don't know whether I want to get into a deep discussion on, how
let's talk. You want to talk about the difference between men and women and their brains.
Really. I want
to mention this scientist, this English scientist called Simon Baron Cohen, and he is a first cousin of the comedian Sacha Baron Cohen, and he has a test, a simple test that you can do that we can link to find out how, if your brain is male, and if so, how male as compared to female, and how female, and the difference is between what he calls systematizing and empathizing. Now, this distance, the fact that men are systematizers is so obvious that it shouldn't need to be explained or argued for. I'll just give you an example, and I'm sure you remember this. There's a longtime columnist with what the Edmonton Journal, his name is David Staples. And Staples wrote this column which nearly ended his career. And Staples talked about being a record collector and being a record collector for many decades. And, and you talk about all these silly record collector things. And having been a record collector and also a book collector and a collector of other things, this was amusing to me. But he pointed out en passant that there weren't any female record collectors. And he almost lost his job as a result. There's all this groveling apology followed. Well, of course, Staples was absolutely right. That I have spent thousands of hours in record stores, and you don't find women in them. You don't find women going through the CDs, or before that, the LPs or whatever. When women go to record stores, typically there's one record that they have in mind, or maybe a couple. They grab them and they get out. The idea that, oh, look, here's something that I already own, but it's been remastered and it has 4 bonus tracks. Oh, this is such a great day. Women don't do that. Women are not going to be able to tell you, all the members of some band over X period of time, because why would they think that was interesting? Mm-hmm. Men find that interesting, and maybe it's silly, but that's the way that men are and women aren't. But this is an example. It's an analogy to what happened at Google. Someone points out an obvious truth, and I'm sorry, we're not allowed to speak the truth anymore, so you'll have to be destroyed.
Right. Yes, but there was pushback. There was pushback from the writer himself, who immediately found outlets that were quite sympathetic to him. He did an interview with Stefan Molyneux. He was actually everywhere pretty quickly. Starting with the alt-right, or starting with Molyneux and a few others who jumped on the story. So there was the fact that, what's different this time? Well, there was no groveling apology. The guy was fired and he went on the attack. Now, when I said I wanted to get this into the political realm, it comes from something said as we discussed the topic for this show. You said, well, the difference now is that Trump is a reassertion of the masculine principle. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into, because that's contemporary. That's what's changing right now, I think, in American society. That there is a reassertion of this masculine principle. It's freaking a lot of people out. It's not like Obama. I think the example that we were talking about was their reaction to the Korean situation. Obama made a threat, but then he qualified it in a very female way, whereas Trump just makes the threat and stops. So, is this situation that we're living in today because there is a reassertion of this masculine principle? I mean, it's not, it might be a matriarchy that we're living in, but there seems to be resistance starting from the top.
Well, there was always going to be resistance to it, because the end result of matriarchy would be the destruction of our civilization. Now, we've gone pretty far along that road, but it was I was putting up this list of thoughts, right-wing thoughts, alt-right thoughts, and it occurred to me, I hadn't really noticed this before, the extent to which the Never Trump Brigade was feminine.
Oh, I never noticed that too, because they always focused on Erik Erikson and Crystal and, the cucks. Those kind of guys were always given the credit for being the Never Trumpers.
Well, I'm just thinking, let's see, Kat Timpf and Amanda Carpenter and Michelle Fields and Dana Lash and S.E. Cupp and Anna Navarro, just to name a few.
They were singing from the song sheet, the Fox song sheet that was Never Trump, though, weren't it? I don't know how natural their opposition was.
Well, no, I think it is natural, because what is the basis of their fame? I'm a woman, allegedly sexually desirable, and I have these thoughts. Yeah, so? You see, they're the beneficiaries of affirmative action. In a traditional masculine-led society, no one would have heard of these women. And I think that they sensed this, if only subconsciously.
But do they like to lose? Or do they like losers? Do they like to surrender the position eventually? You know, they are on the conservative roster.
Well, you bring up an interesting question, because conservatism is based, especially since the fall of the Berlin Wall, on losing gracefully. This doesn't matter to the Never Trump-gates, because they've never been interested in winning. What they want is their status. The fact that Regnery gives them money to write a book, the fact that they're on CNN or Fox, and, oh, wow, she sure is showing a lot of décolletage there. You know, I don't know that anyone has been particularly interested in what these women have to say. But the fact is, they're on TV. People, it's me. People are paying attention to them, and they get to lord it over the other women.
Oh, I see. So that's what it's actually aimed at women. They're aiming their thing at women.
No. Well, no. I mean, you want to get into the thoughts?
They were getting their status from weaker men, weren't they?
Well, they are getting their status from weaker men, and I would just suggest that the more sensitive listeners of our podcast, of which there are a few, and I don't mean that in an ironic or mocking sense, perhaps skip ahead like 30 seconds. Let's say, to be safe, 45 seconds from now, because I'm going to say something which is offensive. That the basis of the support for these right-wing thoughts is that the men are harboring this fantasy that maybe one day they'll get a pity fuck from one of them.
I've heard you express that before, but it still sounds funny. Okay.
No, I mean, I just, you know, it makes glasses. You just wonder how beaten down and, you know, I don't know, soy-filled these men are.
Right.
That, I mean, don't they have women of their own? Don't they have any kind of normal relationships with women that they have to entertain fantasies about someone like Kat Timpf? I mean, it's really sad. Or is the idea that they're women, or, I don't know, completely lost interest in them, or, I don't know, you know, their wives are 60 pounds overweight or whatever, or barely tolerate them? Is that the idea? Because this is entirely unhealthy. I mean, if you look at the reasons why people are paid attention to in society, well, there's a mix. Now, good looks, it doesn't hurt. Sometimes it hurts. It hurts men.
Right.
That, you know, a lot of men, you know, if they're too good looking, they're written off as pretty boys, not serious or whatever. Typically with women, to the extent that they're good looking, this will excite jealousy from other women, but it's not going to hurt them with men. And I would suggest that the reason that Kat Timpf has been as successful as she is because she's not good looking enough to excite jealousy amongst other women. She is solely aspirational. Her attractiveness is solely notional. I don't mean to pick on the woman, but I guess I am going to pick on the woman because she's the one who's made herself into a thought, okay? Those ridiculous glasses that she wears, they're signifiers. What do I mean by that? I mean by that they point to a hidden meaning. Now, the hidden meaning is this: sexual availability. Now, Marshall McLuhan pointed out this paradox. He said that men do make passes at women who wear glasses. And the reason for that is that glasses make women look less attractive, thus making them more approachable. We have seen in recent years this epidemic of women who don't need glasses wearing glasses. And it signifies sexual availability. There's other well-known sexual signifiers in this regard. And often these women use more than one. Tattoos, piercings,
Tinder,
multicolored asymmetrical hair, clothes too tight, particularly when the women are a little chubby, such that they're literally spilling out of their clothes.
The yoga pants, yeah.
Yeah, the yoga pants. As I say, there's a whole bunch of these signifiers, but the glasses is one of the most powerful signifiers, and it can't help but be, because you look at Kat Timpf, these ridiculous glasses that she wears, they're almost as big as her head. And she also has this ridiculous smirk. I suppose it's meant to be pouty, but increasingly as she, approaches 30, it looks increasingly sour, as if she's disappointed in life. And every time I go to her Twitter feed, which isn't very often, she's engaged in this just sickening conversation with these white knighting men. You're just so hot. And it's like, show me some attention, please. Please show me some attention, It took me a whole week to work up the courage to send you this tweet. Please. I need the sun. I need the sun of your attention shining down on me, illuminating my day, illuminating my life. It's just pathetic. Or
misogynist.
You see. Well, no, let's put it this way, okay? If you look at the distribution of talents, that some people are good looking, some people are intelligent, all right? The idea that you're going to have someone who's really good looking, who is also highly intelligent, doesn't matter whether it's male or female, you're not going to get very many people with that combo. Okay. It's just doesn't happen very often. Now, there's this other well-known thought, not blonde, most of them are blonde. Her name is S.E. Cupp, and does she, she uses initials, the cup, what's because it's a D cup? Is that the idea? This woman's Twitter avatar is so photoshopped that she looks barely human. Again, she's got the problem glasses. And she is, to be somewhat less crude, she is really working that rack. She is really working that rack,
Well, they have to, their career span of thought is shorter than running back in the NFL, it seems like they only have a few good years.
Well, I'm curious as to, again, what this idea of aspirational. Because it seems that we have decided to value the aspirational over the actual beautiful. There's a woman, her name is Kristen Soltis Anderson, pollster, political contributor, columnist with the DC Examiner. She does not get anywhere near the attention of these thoughts, and this woman is actually beautiful.
Okay.
And I would suggest to you that it's been traditional in American society because it's strong egalitarianism and a kind of perverted egalitarianism in many ways that beautiful people are discriminated against. That you see, beauty is a gift of God. It doesn't matter how much you spend on hair care products or makeup or spas or whatever. I mean, a woman who is not beautiful can't make herself beautiful. I mean,
there you have it, folks.
Well, no, it's become kind of a joke in recent years. I mean, again,
that's actually a huge industry, Kevin. It's not a joke.
Oh, okay. Megyn Kelly.
Massive industry.
Now, Megyn Kelly, I guess her high point was last year when she was going toe to toe or, body part to body part against Donald Trump. And we talked about this on another podcast. This idea didn't know when she didn't know when she was being done a favor. Yeah. That she acted aggrieved with Trump, and I'm sure it was sincere. But you see, a little humor would have gone so much further. Oh, you're going to pick a fight with Trump, and Trump fights back. Oh, this is outrageous. I mean, can you imagine such a thing? Right?
No, but this is the nut of it. That is the nut of it right there. That is exactly what the Google thing is all about as well. This is the way they operate. They use the cudgel of the victimhood, right?
The victimhood, the victimhood.
It's a cudgel, though. I mean, that's what it is. It's a pose, and it's a way of attacking, I guess.
But NBC...
Passive-aggressive attack.
NBC swallowed the bait, and NBC delivered a dump truck full of money up to her front door and said, we want you to be with us. And now NBC's paying the price.
Well, they were paying the price then. They just didn't know it. That's
because I don't... Megyn Kelly, again, she's not a very attractive woman. And she did these shots, I think, in 2010. These lingerie shots. These weren't stolen pictures, pictures stolen from the cloud or whatever. She sat down for a session of these shots. She's got a good figure, and it was nice lingerie or whatever, and, it should be very pleasing, but it came off as, I don't know, sleazy. That she was trying to look sultry in these photographs, and it just didn't work. But as I say...
She has that jaw that unfortunately seems to...
Well, no, and she cut her hair short, as many people pointed out. She made herself look like a praying mantis.
Okay.
Which was...
She's not really matriarchy.
But, I don't know, blonde, Mm-hmm. And we've got Tomi Lahren, who discovered that she was, wait for it, and this is highly controversial, and, I may shock a few of you people. Tomi Lahren discovered that she was fiscally conservative, but socially liberal. Whoa, I just blew your mind, didn't I?
Wow. I think that sums up most of the thoughts, though.
No. They're highly individual. Individual. And the fact that every single so-called right-wing columnist in Canada is fiscally conservative, allegedly, and socially liberal, wholeheartedly. But they keep carrying on as if, I found a niche here. It's a pretty exclusive niche that I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
But,
they are the only one.
I don't know, Laura Southern, I don't know.
But that is a nice segue, even though it isn't covered in the article that kind of tipped off this whole topic for us. And that was from Harper's magazine, The Rise of the Valkyries. And this was about women of the alt-right.
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of, moved from the thoughts, the libertarian thoughts. Now, when you mentioned Laura Southern, you're kind of into the alt-right. Now, we got a matriarchy starting here on the alt-right?
Well, I mean, the Harper's article was based largely on one woman, right?
Yeah, it was the red ice lady. Yeah, that's the thing. But, I mean, it is plural. It is the rise of the Valkyries, and it does talk about the women that this particular woman has interacted with, which some traditional homemakers.
Well, it's about Lana Lochtef.
Yeah, I've read
now, I joked in VDare a few months ago, and I was talking about Katie McHugh, who was very much not a thought, but that, she hasn't gone blonde. Because, there are two rules to being a right-wing thought, and they go like this. Number one, go blonde. Number two, go blonder.
Right. But here we, of course, Katie isn't mentioned in this article because, like I say, it's everybody surrounding this Lochtef woman from Red Ice. But the wife with a purpose is mentioned, of course, because she has interacted with this Swedish woman.
Well, I don't know, this wife with a purpose, she's very much not a thought. She doesn't look like a thought. She looks really rather friendly and old-fashioned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the things about these thoughts is they look harsh, as a rule, and quite unfeminine. They look as if they want to start a quarrel with you. Now, I know that there's some men who like that, for reasons which are beyond me. But this wife with a purpose is, she seems, her countenance is very sweet, which, as I said earlier, I'm a normal person, a normal man. I like that in a woman. Femininity, in other words.
Okay. All right. But the subtitle of this article is, In the Alt-Right, Women Are the Future and the Problem. So they see them as, shall we say, sort of the linchpin to the whole movement, or at least that's what this C-word Darby,
and she gets into the Nazis. She gets into the Nazis, and apparently the Nazis were so feminist. Bet you didn't know that. Well, yeah, I didn't know that because it's not true, but, you just keep spinning these fantasies.
But the best line in that whole story is, well, they're not as organized as the KKK or the Nazis.
What? Again with the KKK?
And the Nazis.
The KKK was infiltrated by the U.S. federal government going back to, the 1970s?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The only purpose that the KKK serves now is to be referred to in articles like this and for the SPLC and the ADL to raise money on.
Mm-hmm.
You ever had a discussion about women where the subject of rules of war comes up, rules of engagement, that sort of thing?
Can't say I've ever discussed rules of engagement with a woman, but that's probably
they typically lose it.
Bucket list.
And it's like, well, this is a war, isn't it? Yeah. Well, the purpose of the war is to win, isn't it? Yeah. Well, then kill them all.
No mercy.
Well, no mercy. And it's just, that when the scent of blood gets into the water, they're like sharks. I mean, you saw that with the Obama administration. With Susan Rice and that crazy Irish banshee Samantha Power, and there was one other one. And they wrecked. They wrecked Libya, and, they got close to wrecking Egypt. Things got pretty hairy there, right? And they wrecked Syria, and what was their response? Our intentions were good.
We came, we saw, he died.
Yeah, ha, 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 cackling laugh. Yeah. Boy, that Gaddafi sodomized by a bayonet, that's pretty hilarious, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's one point that is actually made in this Harper's article, is that, there have been on the, fringe movements, or not fringe, but extremist movements like the Nazis have had a lot of female followers, or did have a lot of female followers. Oh, by the way, did you notice that she labeled paleoconservatism as an extremist ideology? Did that pass you by? The group is the offspring of various extremist ideologies: the European New Right, identitarianism, paleoconservatism, and Nazism, to name a few.
Oh, to name a few. Okay, yeah. Well, it's funny because La Résistance has been very hypocritical and hilarious about this. Oh, what happened to those principled conservatives? Those well-educated, well-spoken conservatives? Oh, you mean like Pat Buchanan, the man you crucified, like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, Lochtef makes a very interesting point here. When women get involved, she declared, a movement becomes a serious threat. Now, I noticed this some time ago. I told you about it, probably more than once. I may have mentioned it on the podcast, but I'll repeat it. I attended Ralph Klein's victory party in 1994, which was at this big hotel just off Stony Plain Road around 150th. Okay. And I don't know, there's a ballroom there, and there was, like a few thousand people in it. Now, I had been involved in trade union politics in the 1970s and had been involved in some political things. And I went with Lauren Gunter of the Edmonton Sun to this. And I was looking around and I thought, something's not right here. What is it? What is it? And I thought, I see. There's an awful lot of good-looking women in this room. And then it hit me. That's the test. That's the test for the success of any organization or movement. One, the presence of women, and the more good-looking they are, the more successful your organization or movement is because women are drawn towards success, and two, they are repelled by failure.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
okay.
But so when women get involved, the movement becomes a serious threat. Now, I think that's true, but perhaps not in the way that Lana Lochtef believes it to be. I don't know. One of the problems with women in politics is that this is not an iron rule, but that women have this tendency to personalize everything. And I'll mention in this regard Christy Clark, who is... she lost the last election very narrowly, and she's now retired from politics. She was Premier of British Columbia for several years. Her entire political career is based on the fact that she's a single mother. Now, first off, this started in the 1970s. Women started calling themselves single mothers. You'd see letters to the editor signed single mother. Oh, I see, this makes you a superior person. How does this make you a superior person? Well, supposedly you suffered. Well,
struggled.
Why is this my concern, and whose fault is it? Well, let's not get into the fault, because you know the old cliche, which was that evil men had dumped their older wives for younger women, or that they were, incorrigible drunkards, drug users, gamblers, squandering the kiddies' milk money, beating their wives, that sort of thing, right? We now know that somewhere between 2/3 and 90% of divorces are initiated by women. Why?
For those very reasons. No.
Well, no. Largely because of a sense of dissatisfaction. Now, okay, so Christy Clark is a single mother. Yay, Christy, again, I don't get it, but, she made this work for her. And the circumstances of her becoming a single mother are exceedingly strange. Okay, I won't get into it any further than that because of defamation law, but it's just weird. Okay?
Okay.
But so Christie's in politics, and no, we need a creche or something, in the legislature. Well, just for you, Christie, because everyone brings their kids to work. And then in 2004, when she made a lot of enemies in the Liberal Party by announcing she wasn't running for re-election when she was still an MLA, well, it was because of her kid. This poor kid who's been used as a prop by Christy Clark pretty much from the time he was born. Shortly thereafter, Christy decided she was going to run for mayor of Vancouver. And, how's that going to affect your ability to look after your child? But, people didn't make a fuss about that. Well, she lost. But she runs for the leadership of the BC Liberal Party, and she wins. And she's still using this kid as a prop. I'm a single mother. Well, I don't know. Is it very good for your child that you live in Victoria and the kid lives in Vancouver and you're spending somewhere between 70 and 100 hours a week doing your job as Premier of British Columbia? As I say, that men typically are loath to bring up, their personal problems with regard to their work. Because the idea has been, sort this out. Don't bring your personal problems to work. But to the extent that politics has become feminized, their problems become our problems. They become everyone's problems. And they always complain about how very discriminated against they are, when all the evidence points in the opposite direction. For instance, when Margaret Thatcher, I'll just give you a comparison. Sarah Palin was compared to Margaret Thatcher by no less than the former editor of National Review. Now, when Margaret Thatcher, who was a scholarship student at Oxford and then was a research chemist, in the 1940s, she was a research chemist. Not very many female research chemists, and she was a politician at a time when there was very severe discrimination against women. But someone like Sarah Palin, you get bonus points for being a woman, and, we need the first woman whatever, right? Just this week in Newfoundland, a young woman, I believe in her 30s, a TV personality, who was just elected to the legislature, is demanding to be made speaker because she's a woman. Now,
because they haven't had a woman speaker.
They haven't had a female speaker. And you see, it's very complicated because there's all these rules regarding the conduct of the legislature, and this isn't the kind of job that one can bluff. But no, what's really important that we have the first female whatever. I mean,
whatever tools you got to get yourself promoted.
All the evidence is that, it's a plus and not a minus, and that shallow people who would have been, laughed out of the job aren't laughed out of the job because they're women. That we can't make the women angry. You don't want to make the women angry.
Otherwise, they'll stay home from work.
Well, no. Oh, I wanted to mention this fellow Alex Nicholson said, You're going to go after the thoughts, aren't you? And I said, well, your wish is our command. And I wanted to mention in this respect this woman, Laura Loomer, who, I don't know, this is really suspicious that this woman comes from nowhere to be to be one of the best known, women or persons in her niche, just overnight, as it were, right? And I found out recently this woman is 25, and I thought, seriously? I thought that this woman was in her late 30s or something, right? Now, I don't know, she gives a Saftig woman a bad name, which right. I hold against her. But there was this hilarious bit where someone was filming her she was drunk in a nightclub. I'm not going to hold that against her, but she'd come up to some Chad, and let's say she was, she was pushing hard. She was really putting it to him, right? And she started complaining that she was discriminated against because she's a Jew, and they're jealous of, quote, her big tits and high Ashkenazi IQ, unquote. And I thought, pretty reductive, isn't it?
By the way, I just wanted...
But it turns out that tires do not like this woman.
The tire saga. We'll link to that. I don't want to get into that. That's a whole beautiful side topic. I didn't want to mention.
I'll just mention one last thought. Whatever happened to Michelle Fields? Whatever happened to Michelle Fields? She just seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. I thought she wrote this book. I thought this book was going to. This book that she wrote that was going to blow the lid off Washington. Did it come out? Did anyone read it?
Well, let's check it out. I'll look it up, and we'll definitely post an update on Michelle for you, folks. I had a couple of little, side notes here I just wanted to shove in before the end of the show.
Alrighty.
Because I just came across this word when you mentioned she came from nowhere. There actually is a word for coming from nowhere. It's called nullibicity. And I found that because I was looking up the words nulligravida and nullipara.
Okay.
Nulligravida means never having carried a child. And nullipara means never having born or delivered a child.
Okay.
I think I got those right.
And the first one that you mentioned is?
Nullibicity.
I'm going to make a prediction here. I'm going to step on a limb and predict that word is never going to become popular.
Okay. Well, I hope that, because we've talked so much about politicians, particularly female politicians, that, have never had children. We started off poking fun at Angela Merkel way back when the podcast began. That's why I wanted to introduce the words nulli gravida and nullipara much earlier in the podcast, but now I have to stuff them in as an endnote. And I want
we should just talk very briefly. I mean, this problem of life balance is obviously very important, and politics becomes increasingly voracious. It wasn't all that long ago when politicians would have a law practice on the side or some such, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, they don't do that anymore because politics is all-consuming. Now, some years ago, it was suggested that I apply for a job with the BC provincial government as a FLAC. And I knew someone. I had an in. I had a pretty important in. And he gave me some coaching for the interview. It never happened for reasons I won't get into.
Tuck your balls between your legs.
No. What he told me was, look, you can't deny the fact that, you have a family, right?
Mm.
Now, that's not a plus, but, you're not going to mention it, okay? You're not going to carry on about how important your family is to you because, they don't want to hear it, okay?
Mm.
What they want to hear from you is that you will gladly, willingly work yourself to death. That's what they want to hear from you. And increasingly, that's how politics works now. And that does not go well with children. It doesn't go well with family at all. That's why you see now so many homosexuals in politics.
Bingo. You segued into the topic that my final note on this actually comes from somebody's clip on NBC where they took it off of one of the 4chan things. And this was a person that claimed to work for Google. And he decided to write in complaining about the sexual harassment that he received, that many receive at the hands of homosexuals and trannies. That's not really what I want to get into here.
Well, then why did you mention it?
Because of what he says about the women at Google.
Okay.
He says, with that said, he talks about the harassment. With that said, most of them put in work, if only minimal. The women, on the other hand, rarely put in work. A few do a great job. A few need constant revisions or help. But a majority do not work. This, too, is ignored. I'm going to suggest that a lot of that shock at Google, at this guy's real talk and his memo, is due to the fact that many of them are simply covering up the fact that they don't do work. So they have to play the victim.
Well, we have the rise of this new position, the so-called software evangelist, and I'm thinking, that's not a real job. If this job were eliminated, if every such job were eliminated, wouldn't all the companies be better off because they would save all this money? As far as the earlier part that you said, no, I've been a manager in my life. I've had employees working for me. And I noticed that with female employees, the management textbooks talk about this, that one is supposed to take extra care to constantly encourage and compliment female employees. And perhaps I'm wrong in this. Now, with male employees, typically the way that they look at their work is if the boss isn't yelling at me or threatening me, that must mean I'm doing all right. But you see how with the rise of feminist culture, with the rise of sort of feminist terrorism at companies like Google, how women would press their advantage. Sure. Because I kind of got the impression from, as I'd say, what I'd read of the literature, that your modern woman expects to be complimented for showing up, pretty much. And just, not failing spectacularly, needs to be patted on the head. Well, what if you were in a position where everyone was terrified of you? That if some, well-known feminist within the company were to level accusations against a manager, he would be in serious trouble. Wouldn't there be a strong temptation to, just update your social media all day long when you're supposed to be working?
Yeah. Well, that's why I say Google's the test of the matriarchy, I suppose, or at least the corporate matriarchy. In the internal one, not the one run by men at the top.
Well, it's just to wrap this up with regard to Google, because we started with Google. It has been suggested, I read a lot of this at NPC, that there was a trap laid for Google, and Google walked straight into it. People were complaining that this manifesto by Damone, it seemed wishy-washy. On the one hand this, on the other hand that it dealt in rather obvious truths, and that this was quite deliberate. That, I'm not throwing red meat here. I'm just making very rather meek points. And that Google just, this caused an uproar in the company. People stopped showing up for work. The CEO of YouTube, this woman, she pretty much had a fainting fit when she read the memo.
Right.
And that now there's all these lawsuits underway. There's lawsuits with the federal government, National Labor Relations Board. There will be, and apparently these rules that Google has, the code of conduct, is illegal under California law. And you read that there was going to be some big Google BN, which they canceled. Oh, because meanies were picking on Google on social media.
Good times, good times.
This is, Google, which is the 800-pound gorilla of communication in the world, is now trying to pretend that it's the underdog.
Quite comical, but like I say, they've now set themselves up to be the test. And if you see talent start fleeing for greener pastures, that's going to leave behind this workforce that doesn't know how to do anything, and then it will collapse internally.
No, but anyways, you know what it's like. Men will often tell themselves that, yeah, sure, hey man, I was into service. I can put up with diversity lecture, right?
Yeah.
And then when it gets into the third hour, and that, a lot of these men just can't stop themselves. They'll start rolling their eyes conspicuously, and maybe they don't know they're doing it. That's a problem that I have. Or that they'll say something like, God's sake, right? And they don't know how loud it was, and it's like, now I'm in for it. And why would you want to work at a place like that?
Right. That's true. Maybe one day we'll be talking about Google the same way we talk about, what was it? Netscape Navigator, Internet Navigator, AOL. Yeah, well, maybe
one day American workers will have the freedoms that they take for granted in China.
Touche. Okay. Well, I think that brings us to the end of episode 89 of Grace and Steel. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin and Michael Grace.
Just a reminder that the Two Kevins podcast is coming up to its 2-year anniversary, and we're asking for donations to help keep the show on the go. So if you can spare us a little cash, go to twokevins.com and hit the PayPal button. Thanks so much.